Whoa! What is this? Where did you come from, sir?
Turned into a kid show.
Where did you come from?
What are you talking to?
I'm getting there. It's not happy. I'm not happy. I don't know if it's happy, but I'm not happy. It's far worse than that.
It's worse than an animal being stuck in the end.
Yep.
Oh.
Because an animal would get pounded to pieces, and that is a big motherfucking curl of metal in the cylinder head.
Ladies and gents, okay, we've hit our first roadblock. One, Stator is burnt up on one side, light colored on the other side. Ruined.
I would not trust it to survive very long to put it back in again.
And if we're redoing the whole damn thing, why would we put a shit
besides
Stator
the
in
engine, but doing the whole bike, it makes no sense
Right.
to put that part back in. So we will be replacing the Stator. The flywheel looks like it's in good shape, but the flywheel puller that I borrowed, unfortunately, is not the correct one. It is too big a diameter to fit into our flywheel here. So
Now, okay, so since one of our main things was doing the flywheel, does it really matter that we can't? Like,
no, it's the only part that's here. We can knock this off later. We just want to make sure that we take this off before we split the engine cases.
Okay.
So
So
we
what
have
do you
lots of stuff to do before that happens. We can remove the cylinder head today and discuss the cylinder head. We could still do all of that, and then we will probably have to order the correct tool.
So the only
and
thing
we'll
we
have
would
it
have
for
gotten
next
is
week.
take that off.
Just that one little
That's
piece.
it.
Boop. That would have
Okay,
been the
gotcha.
only difference. Yeah, there's
So that's
nothing
not
else
that big
back
of a
there. It's not a huge deal. We will just continue on.
Okay. All right. So we're going to order a flywheel puller for a 2008 CBR1000. And in the meantime, what's the first step for cylinder head removal?
We start with the valve cover.
Let's remove some valve covers, ladies and gents.
So I'm going to start with the secondary air valves.
Okay.
I'm just going to take those off because we're probably going to get block off plates for these anyway.
Right.
So we're just going to take them off now.
Okay. What are those?
These are the valves for the secondary air system. This piece is to stop that little piece from going too far. Can you see that little thing open?
Yes. Now flip it over again. Oh, okay. So there's like a piece underneath that.
To keep these from opening too far and getting
Got it.
stuck.
Okay.
Okay, and then these little grates in here are just to pick up any debris that may be coming through. Can you see in the corner that little hole? So these rubber seals seal off the outside of this. When you chop the throttle, it creates pressure in the system and opens these little valves. Mm-hmm. It sucks air in and then blows it down that little channel. Right. That little channel has a mate underneath the cover that actually runs down to the inside of each one of the exhaust ports and injects a little bit of fresh air into the system.
Okay.
That's to help burn off any unburnt fuel.
Gotcha.
Let's make some people happy and turn this motor over by hand so we can see all the valves move.
Yay!
Okay, you're on that side, Chase. So there is the ratchet with the 14 you could put on that nut that's on there, a bolt that's on the outside of the crankshaft, and you want to turn towards the front of the engine.
On your mark, get set. Little things are working.
Okay, so as you're turning the engine, these are the lobes on the cam. This is the exhaust, this is the intake. So when this lobe goes down, it opens the intake valve. When it comes up, the valve closes with the spring tension, and this one does the same thing for the exhaust side.
Okay,
Pretty cool?
very cool. Okay. It's a little bit challenging to get this thing rotating.
Now, if you think about it, you are now compressing 32 springs.
Like a boss.
So every one of these valves has 2 springs stacked on top of it. An inner and an outer.
Right.
So there's one there, and there's a smaller one that fits inside of it, and then there's a cap that goes over it, and everything slides over the valve stem.
Right.
So as you're turning the engine, you have to compress those springs. So it's
So that's the force I'm
it's
feeling.
literally stealing horsepower from the engine because it takes power to compress all those springs all the time.
Parasitic loss, man.
Which is why Ducatis make so much power.
Desmodromic.
Because there are springs in the Desmo system, but they are just to keep a tiny bit of tension on the valves to keep them closed up against the cylinder head when they're shut. But they open and close with the cam.
But we're talking like minute levels of power increase, right?
Don't take that away from him.
No, you're looking at like percentages.
Our
Get wrecked, son.
I know, but like Ducatis aren't that much faster.
So if you take an equivalent 1000 cc V-twin from anybody else, Ducati can spin theirs about 3,000 RPM faster. Regardless of what RPM you're spinning it at,
Right.
it takes less energy to spin a desmodromic valve train than it does a tappet valve.
I'm just wondering,
Valve
could the everyday person feel that difference? You know what I mean?
Have you ever ridden a Ducati? Are they powerful?
Yeah, but
Okay,
every
then.
bike is
I
powerful.
didn't realize. Why is he trying to shit on Ducati so
Yeah.
I'm not trying to shit on Ducati. I'm trying to get
There
an
is a
understanding.
reason why Ducati uses a desmodromic valve train. There's a reason for it. If it wasn't better, they wouldn't use it.
So why are Ducatis not winning every race thing? Because if they have a more powerful engine,
You still have to get the power to the ground. So from there, it goes with the chassis. And Ducati's biggest problem with their chassis that they found is that the chassis are too rigid because they're using the engine
okay, so
as a stress member for the frame. And the only way to make up the rigidity for the chassis is to soften the suspension. And they're always still trying to fine tune that. As of right now, that V4 is slaying the racetrack.
So I think that kind of answers my thing of like, just because you have a more powerful, efficient engine doesn't mean
that you're going to win? No.
Okay.
I mean, there, if you want to talk about it that way, then you look at a Boss Haas. It's a 350 cubic inch Chevy 5.7 liter V8 engine in a motorcycle. Not the fastest bike in the world.
right.
Probably makes a whole lot more horsepower than anything else out there.
So if our conversation existed only in talking about engines, everything you said was inside of that box. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm good now.
So from this point, because we're just disassembling everything, we don't have to set the engine the top dead center.
We'll do that at the very end when we're putting
everything back together for disassembly.
Okay.
We don't have to. If you were doing maintenance work, or if you were doing like valve inspection, you want to find top dead center for the first cylinder.
Okay.
So you could start your measurement and then measure across as you continue on. We don't really need to worry about that. So we're just going to start disassembling. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get the tension off of the cam chain.
And that's the cam chain tensioner.
Which is on this side.
Which is the little thing that literally just pushes it in, right? And it makes it go from this to this.
You got it. The Honda cam chain tensioners, they have this real cool setup on these. So this is for like maintenance purposes. It's very easy to get the chain tension off. And then if you have to adjust your valves, you take the chain tension off so you can get your camshafts out.
Okay.
All right, so this is how they do it on these. Other machines, you have to take the cam chain tensioner out completely to do this.
Which would be removing these two bolts.
Those two bolts there, but with the Honda, there's a little tiny flathead insert, and then turn it like you're tightening it. And now you can see that the chain is loose. Look right here.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Okay. So this is how I do this for service purposes. I put a screwdriver in there like that, and I take a pair of vice grips. And now it's holding the tension on the screwdriver. So, because the part inside, if you take the screwdriver out, it just unravels back out again.
Oh, okay. Right.
That's how I do it.
Gotcha.
Okay, so now that the tension is off of the chain, we could start removing the cam caps. So these are the cam caps.
Okay.
Now when you do this, you want to do a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here.
Go back.
Work your way back and forth.
Okay.
The reason behind that is the cam lobes on all these cams are not facing up right now. Probably half of them are facing down. So there's tension from the valve pushing back up on them.
So they're going to slowly raise.
So if you were to take all these bolts out and then all these bolts out and take this cap off, all these valve springs are pushing up on the camshafts, and these camshafts are being held in place on this side.
That's going to
These camshafts are hollow.
Oh, so
They will break. They will snap in half. I've only heard a set of cams break once. And it wasn't me that broke them. I just happened to be in the room.
let's keep that number at 1.
I'm happy about that. Totally fine with that one. Now that I've showed you guys how this works with the cam chain tensioner, I'm actually going to remove it.
Okay.
And then once we get the cams out, you can go ahead and check in. So now the reason why you don't want to remove this tensioner when you're doing like service work, here's a gasket here.
And then you have to
If you don't have the gasket,
and you couldn't take this off and not replace the gasket.
correct, it's going to leak.
Oh, okay.
So there is oil pressure behind this, so it will leak oil if you don't replace the gasket on these things.
Or can we pair that in with other stuff?
We could if you want. Look at this thing. That's all tension until there. Okay, so now that this is out, you could see what's actually happened when you insert the screwdriver. All right, and then
Oh, and now pull it out. Ho! That was cool.
so when you're installing this back in, you have to turn this thing all the way in
Right.
and then lock it in place and then insert it. If you try and insert it like this, if you just take this and put this in, all right, and then you take the bolts and insert and just tighten them without turning that centerpiece in, it'll just run that thing in until it breaks cam chain. Or the cam chain guide or whatever other parts are in there. So when you install that thing, it has to be retracted fully before it goes in. And then once it's in there, you pull the tool out and boop, it springs back.
That's pretty cool.
Pretty simple, right? Pretty simple design.
So you can feel the tension of it.
Yeah.
Like,
This thing is also, take that little thing out of there. So here's that gasket. It's actually made out of metal. You see a little tiny hole in it?
right.
So that little tiny hole is what controls the oil pressure that goes into this. So on top of the spring, there's oil pressure behind it to help add tension to the chain so it doesn't rattle around, because the spring sometimes just isn't enough.
Right. Okay.
So the oil pressure helps it stay in place, and that little pinhole is what controls how much pressure goes in it.
That's insane.
Pretty simple.
Right.
You know, to be able to control how much oil flow goes through it by taking
Just
a
a
metal
little.
gasket and poking a little. That hole is exactly that size on purpose.
We'll just keep it on the sides. So you didn't have to release this one because of pressure. There's that pressure we were talking about didn't exist on this. What?
That cap bolt is loose. Either the engine has vibrated this bolt loose, or it is overheated. The engine's overheated and everything is expanded to the point, and then once it shrunk down, it was loose. So
if it's overheated, would that not have been what caused the
that
stator
one's
to?
loose too. That one's loose too. That's 3 out of the 4 bolts that I just cracked were already loose. Okay, so whoever the last person was that was in here, they didn't torque these caps.
Are you saying like the non-uniformity of that kind of coloring is not what we want to see? Like this seems like universally colored, right? Or are you trying to feel for stuff?
You typically don't want to see rotational lines in these. They're usually pretty smooth.
Okay.
Okay, so when you're looking at these rotational lines, it either means that something made its way in there or there was a little bit, nope, that's wrecked.
I mean, yeah, that you could see that one's like it looks like it has two different halves.
Oh, you mean like here?
Yeah, like,
It's worn
so like
and not
look
worn.
at this wornness and non-worn.
Yeah, so this is the one that was loose. All right, let's get these out so we can look at these a little bit better. So obviously there's not a whole lot of space here.
Right.
And you can see that the chain is nice and loose now. So what you're gonna do is you wanna tilt this up, pull the chain off towards you.
That's
Oh, I totally suck.
You totally suck?
Yeah.
Why do you totally suck?
So these, the way these are supposed to come apart is you're supposed to take the cam gear off. And now that I've unbolted it, it's going to be very difficult to do that. So we'll see if we can't figure this out.
Just for the record, Brian, I don't think you suck. Do you want me to hold these down? As you guys can see, lots of things have happened. Cams have been removed, cam caps have been removed, cam chain tensioner has been removed, and valve cover? Valve cover has been removed. Brian showed you guys earlier, but we do have a little bit of wear. Is it wear or is it like damage?
Well, now that they're out, cams don't look so bad. And where I am looking are on not the lobes, but just the journals. The journals are where the cam rotates on.
Okay.
So just these perfectly round pieces is where we're looking for wear.
Right. One of these had a little bit more wear than the other, though. I want to say it was like this one or something.
It was this one right here. So now you can really see the shiny and the dull. All right, so the shiny is where there's a little bit of excess wear. The dull is pretty much where it's supposed to be. And then right here, something went through there and just marred that just a hair. You could just feel it with a fingernail.
Yeah, you can see it too.
This one right here. Ooh, that one you could feel a lot.
Now, is this like replace it damage, or is this like this just doesn't look good?
I'm pretty sure the kit that we're getting for our engine is new cams as well.
Well, so if somebody was taking theirs apart and they saw that, what would they need to do?
That's kind of up to them. If this was my bike, I'd put this cam back in.
Okay.
If this was a customer's machine, I would let them know that it is showing some signs of wear, but I would probably still put the cams back in.
So for here, we're looking for that same thing of like some non-uniformity,
Yes.
like
And
marring or anything like that.
once we find that, we want to
So like right there.
feel. Yeah, that's got some wear in it.
Because you can see like the
Yep.
little darker color there. Hold on, guys.
And that shouldn't be like that.
So that's bad.
So they should all look like this one right here.
Which one? Okay.
See how nice and clean that is?
Yep.
Right? And then the rest of these have a mark there, mark there, mark there. And then it looks like all the exhaust side, except for right here. This one looks at a little bit of wear in it. The rest of these look pretty good. As far as the cam journals go, I would call this head good.
So it doesn't seem like the loose bolts on the
Well,
cam
I mean,
caps.
it made a little bit of excess wear right there. Because on this cap, this bolt was tight, and 1, 2, 3 bolts on this side were loose. So this cam had a little bit more opportunity to wiggle around.
And that could have caused,
And
or
that's
most likely
what's going to
caused.
cause that for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not surprising that most of the damage is on the side that had the loose bolts then.
There's nothing there that catches a fingernail, so it should be okay. As long as oil pressure is what it's supposed to be.
Right.
Right? Okay. The rest of these look pretty good. I'd be okay. I'd be okay with this.
I'm happy to hear that.
From here, we can remove the entire cylinder head as an assembly, or we could start disassembling all of the lifters and valve shims and all that stuff. I think I'd rather take the head off as one piece
Okay.
and then lay it down separate from the rest of the engine and then disassemble the head separately.
So we can disassemble this after we take the whole thing
Absolutely.
off. Okay, so we're going to remove the cylinder head now.
Yes, we're going to remove all the stuff required to remove the cylinder head, right?
Okay.
And then the cylinder head should come off. We'll take it down, we'll put it on the bench, and then we'll disassemble the head as far as we can. There is a specialty tool that is required to get the valves out, which we don't have, but that's okay.
Okay.
That's okay.
We will see you guys when the cylinder head has been removed.
Question away, my good man.
So when I'm doing research on first rides, I'm reading these engine specs that mostly don't mean anything. I know that Japanese bikes are inline 4 cylinders.
1, 2, 3, 4 in a row.
Okay, so there's 4 cylinders inside of this engine. Mm-hmm. How many valves
2, 3, 4.
does this engine have?
Has 4 valves for each
Per
cylinder.
So all of these are valves.
2 intake, 2 exhaust, 2 intake, 2 exhaust, 2 intake, 2
Okay.
exhaust, 2 intake, 2 exhaust.
So could this be, so it has, what, 16 valves?
Yes.
Okay. Or does every cylinder always have 4 valves?
No.
Just sometimes they have only 2 because
Yes.
an intake and an exhaust. Mm-hmm. Okay, so when something says an inline 4, 16 valves.
4 valves per cylinder.
Okay. When talking about engines, in the manner that I do, first rides, right? Just general overview of the bike. Does it fucking matter how many valves the bike has?
Yes.
You care. Like, some people care about how many valves it has.
So Yamaha went back to a 4 valve head from their R1 when they switched to the crossplane engine.
Okay.
Before that, they were a Genesis engine.
Okay.
So you know how Ducati names their engines? They have a Testastrada, Testastrada 2.
Yes.
Okay. Yamaha has a Genesis and a Genesis 2.
Okay.
The Genesis engine
Right.
is 5 valves per cylinder. There's
How can it be
3 intake and 2 exhaust? So the 3 intake valves
Holy fuck.
are small, but there's 3 of them. So they
Okay.
equal to 2 larger valves, or maybe even a little bit more than 2 larger valves.
Right.
What they figured out that, what Yamaha figured out after a few extra years of R&D is that they can get just as good a flow with 4 valves instead of 5. Mm-hmm. There's 1 less valve for every cylinder. There's a lot less machining to do for the cylinder head. The cylinder head is a lot less complicated, and they're a lot less expensive to build with 4 valves instead of 5.
So when I'm saying stuff about engines, I get the like inline
Some
4.
engines are 3 valves per cylinder, 2 intake, 1 exhaust.
So when we're talking about valves, and I'm mentioning it with first rides and stuff, it's literally how many of these little guys are per cylinder.
Allow air in to the cylinder,
Right.
and allow air out. I should say allow charge into the cylinder and exhaust out.
Okay.
So the more valves you have, the easier it is to get more fresh charge into the cylinder, and the more valves you had, it's easier to get the spent exhaust gases out of the cylinder.
Okay.
That's why they put multiple valves in things.
Okay.
How does that pair up with the single and double cam set?
So let's say you could still have an inline 4-cylinder, 4 valves per cylinder head with a single overhead cam. Now a single overhead cam will be 1 cam, and instead of having 8 lobes on it, it's got
16.
16.
And it can all be run off
And
of
what
the
it'll
one
do is
cam.
it'll sit in the center, and then there'll be rockers that run to either side, and the cams will push on the rockers, and the rockers will open the valves on both sides. That's actually how they make Bombardier Sea-Doo engines, are single overhead cam, 4 valve per cylinder, inline triple for their watercraft.
So that would be 3 cylinders
With
in a
4
line
valves
like
for
this.
each cylinder, and
Okay.
in a single camshaft that runs intake and exhaust off of 1 cam.
So it would look like that, 1 single cam.
It's actually just as wide because the cylinders are really big.
Okay.
You know, it's still just as wide. They're just because the displacement is almost the same. It's around 1,000 cc's on their inline 3 cylinders, so
Okay.
they have to make the pistons bigger to make up all the volume
Right.
with 1 less.
Okay.
So it'll still be
having-
approximately the same size,
Right.
but it'll be 3 cylinders instead of 4, 3 larger cylinders than the 4 cylinders that are here,
Right.
and it'll be a single overhead camshaft.
But
Okay.
like sport bikes and stuff, are there any that are still being made single overhead cam?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
I'm glad I asked that question because having like when you see the spec sheets, there's so many fucking numbers just floating around.
And you're like, what does all this stuff mean?
right, and then like
Right,
I
so
go to
SOHC, I'm sure you've seen
Yes.
somewhere, single overhead cam. DOHC, dual overhead cam.
wow. Okay.
Yes. So if it's an I4 SOHC,
Right.
that'd be an inline 4 single overhead cam.
Single. Okay. Gotcha. I don't even know if we'll put that in the edit, but that's helpful for me.
Cool.
'Cause-
Okay.
Yeah.
You ready to take the head off?
Yeah. Say what? Head off.
Ready to take the head off?
Are these the 14s? That-
All right, you should just be able to pull it up. Don't drop it. Okay. Woo, these are gross.
Ow.
This is a dirty, dirty engine. But I did say the other day when I was looking at this that the valve seals were leaking. So this is all burnt oil.
So you're not really surprised seeing that?
Nope, not even a little bit. This engine's been rebuilt.
How do you know that?
I'm going to tell you in a second. Can you see all these lines in here?
Yes.
It's called cross hatching.
Okay.
Okay. Pretty much what you do is there's a hone. It's almost looks like a round wire brush,
Okay.
but at the ends of the bristles of the brush are little stones.
Okay.
They make a bunch of different sizes.
Right.
Okay, so before you put a cylinder on, you want to put fresh cross hatching in it. Those lines help the oil stick to the inside of the cylinder.
Makes sense. Okay.
All right, so you take your hone, it goes on a drill, and you rotate it and go in and out as it's spinning. And that will give you the up and down lines all over the cylinder
Okay.
to help an engine with 30,000 miles on it. I've never seen with that much cross hatching on it.
So that would only happen if somebody had
Went
done
in
that.
and did that. Looks fairly recent too. I mean, there can't be a whole lot of mile, and it's definitely not done by Honda because theirs is way more deliberately angled. See how shallow it is?
Right.
The angle is like only like this. When you get it from the factory, they're almost, because all their hones are done by machine.
Right.
And the machine spins and does this real fast, and they're all the same because they use the same style of hone for every cylinder. This cross hatching is way tighter than a factory cross hatching.
So do you think somebody just rebuilt this engine? and
Someone
did a
has
shit
rebuilt
job?
this engine. They didn't do a great job.
So does this mess up the cylinder, or like? Because this is
No, the cross hatching is okay.
Okay.
That's fine.
So it's not a big deal.
Not a big deal. Not the way I'd like to see it, but not a huge deal. These pistons are disgustingly dirty. Not surprised. There is a ton of carbon on them.
Yeah, if I had a pan with that on it, I would throw it away. So
You know.
Season.
I wouldn't cook any. I would cook nothing.
So
on
here's
that.
the problem, okay? Take your gloves off. Rub that between your fingers.
It's like sand.
Exactly. You want sand inside your engine? What do you think sand like that could do inside something that, if this little piece were to fall in between the piston and the cylinder, every other time the piston went up and down, it would put a scratch in it up and down. Listen to that. The other day, Luke poured a little bit of engine med
Yes.
into his fuel system.
Saw that.
Engine med helps break down the carbon,
Oh.
and then
Okay.
it expels it out the exhaust system.
Would engine med be enough to fix this level of shit?
Maybe if you ran engine med through it for about a year, every tank for about a year, you know, depending on how many miles you put. I would say 1,000 miles of engine med treated fuel would help significantly to get the carbon out of this engine. Would it be spotlessly clean? No. Would it knock all this scaly stuff off? Most likely.
So that would just like increase the longevity of the engine?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
How often should the regular person use engine med?
It depends on how many miles they put on their machine.
Okay.
You know, Luke rides his bike a lot. He puts a lot of miles on his bike. Honestly, as long as he's using premium fuel, engine med once a year would probably be fine.
Okay.
You know,
I was getting concerned because I got 29,000 of that.
Now. If you put 1,000 miles a year on your bike, and you don't always buy good fuel when you do it, the carbon buildup comes very fast.
Okay.
And then you don't ride it enough to heat the engine enough to break down the carbon to expel it,
Right.
so it builds. So if you ride your bike a lot, you're less likely to need something like engine med because you're constantly
Yeah.
running fresh fuel over the tops of your pistons and
Right.
across your valves, and it helps keep that stuff clean. If you ride it and then put it away and let it sit, and then you ride it, and you put it away and let it
So
sit.
you're talking about what WR
I was
is
about to
talking
say.
about.
You put a layer of carbon on, and then you put another layer of carbon on top of it, and you put another layer of carbon
I'm
on top of
surprised
that.
the cylinders on my WR even can move. Oh! That is the cool part. How many times do each of these go up and down? Is that your RPMs?
Yes, revolutions per minute.
So one revolution is this goes from top back to top.
All right, ready? I'm going to give you one revolution. I'm going to get a piston all the way to the top.
Okay.
Okay, this will be one revolution.
Bro. So when I'm hauling ass down
At
the road
10,000
at
RPMs?
14,000 RPMs.
14,000 times every minute.
Bro. That is a lot. What is 14,000 divided by 60? Hey Google, what's 14,000 divided by 60?
The answer is approximately 233.333.
233 times a second.
At 14,000
Holy
RPM.
balls, dude.
Now you understand why the engine has to be so tight, because if the clearances were too big and it was moving at that speed, it would rip itself to pieces.
Bro, 1 second, 233
And 33 times.
That is-
0.33333333.
I hope you guys are happy with yourselves.
Clearly.
Wow.
Yeah, from my experience, I would have to say that this engine has been rebuilt at least once.
Okay.
We are going to leave the engine as it sits for now.
When
and
you
we're
say
going
engine,
to-
you mean
This is the
this?
engine, yes.
Okay.
We still have engine
What's
cases.
left of the engine?
So right now we're going to focus on the cylinder head.
Information and work hard.
I do want to give you one more little explanation. I'm sure you guys
An
will
explanation, sure.
love this. Do you see as I'm turning this, it goes 2 cylinders, 2 cylinders, 2 cylinders, 2 cylinders,
Yes.
back and forth, inside, outside, inside, outside.
Right.
That is a linear plane crankshaft.
Okay.
So if you're looking down the center, when we get the crankshaft, we'll look at this, but if you look down the crankshaft from the side, it has 2 cylinder journals here and 2 cylinder journals here in a line.
Okay.
When you're talking about like Yamaha's crossplane, when you turn the crankshaft like that, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
You know what this means, Brian?
It will
Next
take
bike's
apart an
gotta be an
R1
R1.
motor. So I do believe the R1 engine uses a very, very small balancer.
What year did the Yamaha start doing the crossplane?
I think 12.
All right, official call out for Wrecked Bike Rebuild season, what will it be?
6.
Official call out for Wrecked Bike Rebuild season 6. We need a crossplane R1. If you wreck one, or if you have an old one, and it's
Don't
that,
go wrecking one. In
don't go
Yeah, don't
wreck
wreck
your
one on
bike,
purpose.
but I want to see a crossplane. Anyway,
So that's why these engines are very buzzy.
okay.
You know, there's a lot of handlebar buzz. They make a lot of vibration
Right.
because there's so much reciprocating mass with 2 pistons going up and down at the same time like that.
Okay, so an R1 would be smoother
It's a little bit smoother,
because of the...
and it uses a smaller balancer shaft in it because it doesn't make as much vibration.
Okay.
It's a little bit more balanced just the way it's designed.
Knowledge with Brian.
There you go, a little bit of knowledge.
All right, guys, we got the cylinder head removed and the freaking carbon on the top of these cylinders,
Not cylinders.
pistons.
Thank you.
Is disgusting.
We haven't even turned the head over yet to see what the carbon looks like on that.
Well, we'll do that in a
We
second.
need to disassemble it first.
Look at the grossness. So Brian has deduced that the engine has been rebuilt before. Are you like, what are you at, 95% sure?
I'm 90+% sure that this thing's been rebuilt at least once.
This is not like terrible, but it's just like it's like a dirty apartment. It's not going to ruin your apartment, but like.
This is what happens when you use shitty gas.
Oh.
I go at 80.
Yeah. Kids, always use the highest gas you can get.
Always
on these
use the
motorcycles.
recommended fuel for your engine. Now, you could have an engine that doesn't make a lot of power, you know, like your WR. Your WR does not need premium.
It gets premium, baby. It's
Now,
the best
because you run premium in your WR, it could look like this. Because your engine doesn't require premium fuel, it may not create enough heat internally in the engine to burn all the fuel off, and it leaves a lot of deposits like that.
What's that stuff Luke puts in his
Engine med.
This is when Jason goes and gets by his engine med. That poor WR. Okay, so
Engine med is actually a Yamaha chemical.
good. Look at Yamaha. See, that's why I buy Yamahas. Okay, so this is as far as this is going today.
Sorry.
A brief moment of Heather. Hi.
I'm running errands with Hillary. I'll be back in a minute.
Okay.
No!
Love you.
I'll have fun.
All right. Well,
Hillary said hey.
everybody on YouTube says hey to her as well. All right. So my wife is going to go shopping with her sister. Okay, so now that we all know that, We're not touching any more of this today.
But we are going to touch some more.
We're going to disassemble the cylinder head, which is this.
As much as we can.
Okay. And then this is going to be what we dig into on the next episode.
Yes.
Okay. So if you guys aren't subscribed, make sure to stay subscribed and like this video because thanks, boom. That'll be on the next episode. But for now, goodbye.
Yep.
Okay.
So we need to move this thing out the way.
All right. Step 1, move the remainder of the engine out of the way. Step 2, disassemble the cylinder head. Step 3, done with video.
You got it.
You guys know what we do.
Clear that off a little bit.
Why is the camera moving by itself? Luke, be careful. It has a mind of its own.
Inspector!
Ah! All right. We will see you guys when the cylinder head is disassembled. On your mark, get set.
Don't drop it.
Noted. I don't want to cause any murder damage.
Yeah, don't drop the engine cases. They'll be junk. Especially if you drop it with the crank in it. There's too much weight.
Okay. 3, 2, calves.
Whoa! What is this? Where did you come from, sir? Where did you come from?
What are you talking to?
I'm getting there. It's not happy. I'm not happy. I don't know if it's happy, but I'm not happy. It's far worse than that.
It's worse than an animal being stuck in the
Yep. Because an animal would get pounded to pieces, and that is a big motherfucker throwing metal out of the cylinder head. What are you? What the f is this?
Oh, there's the intro.
I have no idea. I have no idea what this came off of. Look at how that thing was curled off of whatever it was. Okay, didn't see this before. There was a piece of metal stuck in here. It could have been that piece of metal that I just pulled out of there. But you see the ring.
Yes.
And you see the ring.
Whoa, yeah. I'm assuming that's a no, that's a bad.
It does happen, but these are pretty bad. Because those buckets, or lifters, if you will, they rotate
Okay.
while the engine is running. Just the vibration internally allows them to rotate, and that's why you get rings in them, but those are pretty big. Usually, like, they look like that one,
Yeah, like
where it's very
super
light.
thin.
You know what I mean?
Is this what we do, or?
There. It's like that one's real light.
Right.
That's what you normally see. So this one is
Those are like carved in.
these lifters or buckets, whatever you want to call them, need to stay in their places.
As in, that one needs to go directly back in there.
Yes.
Can we draw on them?
Yes.
Hell yeah. Are we going to say like 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A?
I'd say 1, 1, 1, 2. Cylinder number 1.
Okay.
So I1, 1, I1, 2. So intake, cylinder 1, valve 1, valve 2, valve 1, valve 2, valve 1, valve 2, valve 1, valve 2.
Okay.
Across.
All of these are intakes?
These are all intakes, these are all exhaust.
Gotcha.
geologist.
So why is there mold on the bottom?
It's not mold though. That's ethanol deposits.
Is that back to the shitty gas conversation?
You know, ethanol sucks. It's pretty much in everything. But if you ride your bike often, the ethanol doesn't have a chance to build up like that. So, but these are pretty badly carbonized. Can you grab me a razor blade?
I surely can.
These center sections you could see very distinctly separated by this gasket, which means that all of the cylinders were separated. There's no head gasket leak going on anywhere from cylinder to cylinder.
Okay.
So that's good. What else are we really looking for the cylinder head? Without taking the valves out, we really can't look at too much more in here. But this carbon layout is really bad. The way it's been accumulating. It's just shitty gas.
How much shitty gas do you got to run to get to the point that this bike is at?
I mean, this bike's got, what, 40,000 miles on it?
Yes,
30,000 miles on it? 29 or something like that? 28? So it takes that much time. You know? If it's been rebuilt already, who knows how long this thing has been back together?
Right.
You know, it takes that much time because unless they put the cylinder head back on dirty, which is a distinct possibility.
At this point, yeah.
You know?
So how would you take this apart further than it currently is?
So to remove the valves, you need to hold the back of the valve and then compress the spring. As you compress the spring, it'll come down and there's two little cotter pins that sit in like a V. And there's a groove in the top of the valve that they have little pins in these little keepers that sit in the groove. And then when the spring tension comes back up, it pinches that part and everything holds in place with that. There's no actual hardware. They're just referred to as cotters.
That seems like a giant pain in the ass.
It is quite fiddly.
Okay.
And if you happen to get one of those cotters in, but not in all the way, as your engine is revving into the stratosphere,
Right.
it could spit one of those keepers out.
Oh, fuck.
If it's not in perfectly,
And then it blows up.
and then shit goes bang. So if you actually just lost a keeper and the other one was in there and it held everything together, that one keeper bouncing around in here would just absolutely destroy
Wreck
things.
shit.
So what would happen is the cotter would drop out and it would find its way down into one of the valves.
Just because of
You know, because
everything moving
the
around.
springs are open. You know, there's
Right.
spaces in between. The cotters are small enough to fall in between
Oh my good God.
the spaces in between the springs. And if it gets there, then it can drop down the center of the springs to the back of the valve.
Right.
And then when the valve opens and closes, it can go in there. And then the valve, how many times did we say the piston goes up and down?
233 per second.
The valves double that.
Oh my good God.
So the valves are moving twice as fast.
So 460 times.
So imagine if that thing fell in there for half a second, the valve has pounded it into the cylinder head 250 times.
500 times, right?
Well, for half a second.
Oh, half a second.
You
Right,
know?
right, yeah.
Half a second that thing's in there, it's going to smash it, 200 plus times in half a second if it gets caught up in there.
Yep.
Now that cylinder is junk, that valve is junk, your cylinder head is junk. You're most likely going to drop that cotter now into the cylinder once it falls out of the valve seat. Then it's going to bounce around inside the cylinder. It's going to wreck your piston, your cylinder, your cylinder head, your valve seals. It's going to wreck everything. It's just going to wreck shit all the way around.
So what are we sending our cylinder head off to be done to?
So what they're going to do is they're going to install a new set of camshafts with a taller lobe
Okay.
with a slightly wider tip to it.
Okay.
So it holds the valve open for just a couple more degrees of rotation.
Okay.
Okay. Allows more air fuel ratio, more air fuel in,
Right.
more exhaust out.
And that's
Per
called
rotation?
porting?
Now that is just that's just a bigger cam.
Okay.
Okay. And then what they're going to do is, well, it's easier to see on the exhaust side. So the shape and the amount of space inside of here, these passageways that come from the back of the valve out of the cylinder head
Right.
get reshaped
How the
with a die grinder with a bit on it with a long shank. So you
A
know we were
job.
grinding away at
Yeah.
so they would use a very similar tool to that. And they'd go in there and they already know what shape it's supposed to be because they've already done the work.
Right.
So they'll probably go in and they'll clean this thing. They may steam clean it so they could see everything. It'll get all the carbon off, get all the oil, all the grease, all the grime off. All the valves will come out, and then they'll go in and they'll mark where they want to take material off. So wide, so long, certain shape, because they've already figured that part out.
Right.
And then somebody just sits at a bench with this thing on a little stand, and they just knock out whatever material they're supposed to.
So we're leaving the valves in. to
No,
the-
we will take them out.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
We will take them out. The tool to get these out is not very expensive.
Okay. So
And
we'll
then
just need
once
to
we
order a
have
tool.
it, we'll have it forever.
So we need to order a tool to do that and a tool to get the flywheel off. We need to order a flywheel puller and a valve removal apparatus.
Yes.
All right, guys, more problems on two wheels. Back for our final check-in. And as per Wrecked Bike Rebuild usual, we found
Some more metal in the cylinder head.
some more metal, this time in the cylinder head. This, you guys can see that. Brian just popped that out of one of the cylinder heads, like right over here, right?
Yeah, I actually fished it out of this well right here, which is the return for the oil. So the oil gets pumped into the cylinder head to lubricate the cams and everything, and then it just gravity drains through this hole down past everything else and back to the engine sump.
Probably shocker to none of you guys at this point. We just keep finding more and more things problematic with this engine. Show them the bottom section where you were saying the bad gas is just infecting this entire thing.
Yep. So these white spots that you see here are all ethanol deposits. They kind of leave this white, almost sugary residue behind. The ethanol does. So yeah, this thing is pretty covered in carbon. I've seen worse, but this one is not great. We are going to send this head out to have it flowed and new cams put in it. So we'll get this thing back and it'll look brand new again.
And that brings us to the end of this episode, guys. As we said earlier, the goal was to get the cylinder head removed. We are not able to remove the valves, right? Because we need a specific tool. We're going to order that tool. We're also going to order the flywheel puller tool. At that point, we will be able to finalize the cylinder head and the flywheel off. And I assume we can probably just like knock that out on the next episode, right?
Yeah, we should be able to get them in just a couple days.
Okay. Any last words for how the hell all that went with the metal and everything?
A little surprised about this piece of metal. Not really sure what that whole deal is, where it could have come from, and how long it's been in there. Do I think it's been causing any major issues? That very well could have scored the top of that bucket that we were looking at. If that kind of made its way in there for a second and it spun
Right.
around a few times while it was in there, could have done that. Is that the case? Don't know. Can't be sure.
Right.
But there's definitely a lot of carbon in the cylinders between being stuck in the combustion chamber and on the faces of the pistons. There's a lot of carbon in here, so it'll make for a happy engine later when everything is replaced and cleaned up. And
So at this point, we have one more engine day. And based on what we've seen last time, what we've seen today, what do you think we have looking at next time?
next time we should be able to get the rest of the engine apart.
Do you foresee any worry based
Well,
on this?
We still haven't found what causes our rattle yet. We found some things that could possibly have been the cause of our rattle, but I'm not positive. I'm not convinced that that's the be all end all,
Right.
what we found. I wasn't expecting to find the cause of our rattle in the cylinder head, so
Okay.
I'm not surprised that I didn't find it. I was expecting to find some wear in the cylinder head, and there is very little.
Okay.
You know, we saw a couple of places where you could see that there was some actual wear,
Right.
a little different than the rest of the stuff that was here, but all in all, the cylinder head looks pretty good.
Relatively speaking.
Nothing that scares me. You know, nothing that I'm like, well, this thing's junk. You know, it still looks all very usable, which is good.
Yeah.
And like I said, we are going to be sending this cylinder head out, so they'll be doing the measuring to make sure that everything is good. But we do still have some disassembly to do. We get to do all these lovely, valves and valve caps and keepers and springs and all that stuff that's in there that needs to come out before we can send this thing over to the machinist and have it done. What else they'll do besides porting the passages for the intake and the exhaust is they will install new valves and seat the valve and the cylinder head together. So when we get this thing back, it should look like this, with all the valves in it already, ready for the new cams that we're going to get as well to be dropped in during the assembly.
Cool.
So
Okay. Well, in that case, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to an end. Tune in next time for us hopefully finding out what the knocking is. This whole engine disassembly thing started as let's find out what's knocking, and it has turned into us finding far more that was wrong with this motor than we originally thought. So tune in next time to find out what else is in the engine that shouldn't be. And if you got to this point in the video, make sure to hit the like button. It always helps us out with the YouTube algorithm and the stupid things that YouTube wants you to do to make sure that the video gets posted to other people. And if you got to this point in the video, then you should probably check out our Patreon page. That is the only way we are able to run this entire show, build these amazing motorcycles, and give them away to the people that support it. So thank you guys for watching the show. I'm Chaseontwowheels. This is Team Behind, and I'll see you guys next time. Later. So, outro crew, fun question. Would you rather find a piece of metal or a crushed vole inside of your engine if you were taking it apart?
Jesus.
Can't wait to read the comments. Also, outro crew, when y'all are commenting, make sure you put your comment, say either OC or outro crew, because if you guys just answer the question, it could be the same question that other people are saying, but if you say OC, we'll know your outro crew. All right, outro crew, that's it. Love you long time. Later. All right, guys, fun Bo fact of the day. Bo, tell the people
This is a-
what a vole is.
I always known that a vole is a rodent of some sort, but this is a bow fact that I just learned of today.
Okay, you're Bo facting.
They're relatives of lemmings and hamsters.
Okay, so that's a vole.
Yeah, they look like mice, but they're more related to hamsters. They call them field mice in North America.
If you guys are curious why Bo is telling you what a vole is, it's because before we started filming today, there was a vole in my house. So, you know, it's, what's it called when it's timed correctly?
Fortuitous.
It's fortuitous.
They
I
only
wouldn't.
live 3 to 6 months.
Well, this one has not living any longer. He definitely didn't make it in the 3 to 6
Do you want
months.
to know about their sexual behavior?
All right, that's the Bo fact of the day. Tune in next time to find out whatever the else Bo
Hey, I
has to
can
know.
tell them about the mating system.
We are done here. Goodbye.